All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Correct Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, today I got a wild one for you. I'm going to tell you the truly bizarre story of a man named Michael Marin. And here we are, late May. I talked about it last episode, but it's the one time a year where the weather is good enough to attempt the summit of Mount Everest. And as we've seen, people pick all sorts of reasons why they are going to climb Mount Everest, and maybe one of the strangest, most memorable reasons and story to come out of that reason is Michael Marin. In 2009, he decided he was going to climb Mount Everest as a way to drum up publicity in order to sell raffle tickets for a chance to win his house in Arizona. And he was a strong climber. He did like local TV interviews in Arizona before he left, where he's sitting with the news anchor and he's got carabiners and like harnesses on the desk, like, see, climbing stuff. And then he was doing interviews once he got out on the mountain at base camp. The wind, I'm on Mount Everest, buy a raffle ticket for my house thing. And he was successful. He got all the way up to the top. Thinking about Michael Marin at the top of Mount Everest, surely he had a big grin on his face, that summit high, ear-to-ear grin, probably soaking in the views of literally the top of the world. And I was thinking, in that moment, the phrase, "it's all downhill from here," has probably never been more relevant to anybody in history. But let's go back. Michael Marin was born in Seattle. He was a devout Mormon. He went to BYU. After BYU, he went on his Mormon mission to Japan, where he learned Japanese fluently. He also fell in love with Asian culture. After his Mormon mission, he went to Yale and got his law degree from Yale. I really can't think of any of the Ivy League schools anymore without thinking of the college admission scandal and just, all right, I'm a tennis player now. I get to go to Yale. I'm on the row team. So he goes to Yale, gets his law degree. I'm pretty sure in the late 80s he passed the bar in New York. And then because he was so good at speaking Japanese and loved Asian culture, he ended up going back to Japan. At first he was a lawyer for some of the big banks. And I guess he's a really smart math guy. And he ended up overseeing, they said, complicated transactions. He worked with Merrill Lynch and the Lehman Brothers, so all the big hitters, and ended up making an absolute fortune in Asia with the big bank people. At a certain point, he was done with Asia, and he ended up moving back to the States, to Phoenix, Arizona. He had a wife for a while. The marriage fell apart after 12 years. They had 4 kids. Everybody lives in the Phoenix area, and he supposedly had a fortune from his days working in Asia. And it gets to a part of the story which I think they could make a whole documentary just on this one part, and I truly don't understand it. I was trying to find more information about it, but he's in Arizona. I guess he's got this big nest egg from the fortune that he made in Asia. He hasn't really been working. And one of his, they call it a business associate, has this house in Phoenix. It's in like a really nice area of Phoenix. I think it's the Biltmore Estates or something. And this giant mansion, it's a 10,000 square foot mansion in Phoenix. They show the pictures of, they always show like the home theater. They got like the big movie theater. It's this giant house and that his business associate owned, and it was being foreclosed on. So the business associate is losing the mansion. You know, it happens. But for a reason that I truly will never understand, Michael Marin decides that he is going to purchase the house either right before the foreclosure, or I don't know if it's through the foreclosure, but I guess it would make sense that it was right before the foreclosure. But the mortgage that this house comes with, which now Michael Marin signs over to his soul, the mortgage that came with it had a $17,000 monthly payment, and we're about 6 months away from when I'm talking about, there was a balloon payment due of 2.3 million. So I really just can't figure out, why would Michael Marin take over the mansion? Did he really think, I don't know if he had confidence in himself, like, yeah, I'm about ready to start a new business project and money's going to be rolling in, it doesn't matter. Or maybe he owed something to this business associate and he bailed him out. But anyway, as you can imagine, it puts Michael Marin in a financial free fall, this mansion, and he's not even really working. The days of Asian banking are long gone, and they said he pretty much went into a financial free fall. Also, like I read a pretty good article, I'll post it in the description, on this whole long story called AZ Central, and then a guy from Newsweek also profiled Michael Marin, and through both of those stories that they did, they interviewed a bunch of his girlfriends. I guess he's a good-looking guy, strong, climbed Mount Everest, big calves. How you doing, ladies? So he was dating all these women, and through those profiles and stuff, they interviewed a lot of his ex-girlfriends and the women that lived with him and people that knew him. And it sounds like the guy from Newsweek goes, he's doing an interview, I think with CNN, and he goes, yeah, he was, I hung out with Michael Marin for an extended period of time, and he really was an overachiever. He had made a bunch of money. He was a good-looking guy. He was one of the smartest guys in the room at all times, and he just was one of those, people. Oh, yeah, he was like a really good singer. I guess he tried out for an opera in Arizona and was a walk-on. They're like, man, this guy's good. He was really good at playing the piano, so he had all of these great attributes, but after talking to the women he dated and people that knew him, I guess with that, where he, really succeeded and won, and anything that he went for, he was used to getting, coupled with that, they said, was a really petty, insecure side of him as well. Later on, I'll get to it, but Michael actually wrote a play, and it's obvious that he's the main character, and the character is this extreme badass, and you really get to see how Michael pictured himself. It even, as he's describing himself or the character, he references the Heineken guy, the most interesting man in the world. So you could see, I think a lot of his, I go on these adventures and stuff, he was trying to portray to the world like I am this, character. But like they said, I think because he was so smart, he had always been kind of the smart guy and the athletic guy and the good-looking guy and all of that. They said because of that, they think that he pretty much couldn't take a loss. He just turned petty, and he couldn't get past it or let it go. I can take an L, man. I'm used to it at this point. I think it's a superhero to be able to just take a loss and be like, well, yeah, all right, well, okay. Moving forward, but he just couldn't do it. One of his ex-girlfriends, I thought this was a good quote. She said, he could not let go of his defeats, however trivial, and instead lashed out self-destructively. So a couple situations where this comes out is he's back in Phoenix, and he's riding a motorcycle, and he gets into an accident, crashes into another car, flips over, and he ends up getting a traffic ticket for failure to control your vehicle and causing an accident. And he was, I guess, just furious that he got this ticket. He goes, I'm going to fight it in court. I'm going to defend myself. So he fights it in court, loses, and then I guess still is just fuming over the whole thing. Imagine just how long is it realistic to be mad at getting a ticket? Even if you did get screwed and he was driving safely or whatever, how long would you want to take up your life? At a certain point, you just got to let go. But he was still just furious. And though nothing strange happened in the short trial, he found a little technicality that the recording of the trial was all garbled up. So he gets a new trial just for the traffic citation does the new trial, again, represents himself. And I guess in the new trial, he went on this big monologue to the jury towards the end about how like it would be impossible pretty much for him to cause this because he's such a good driver, because he was trained to drive at a world-class driving school, and it was this grand, like, and I guess it just flopped. The jury was like, no, he didn't come off as likable or cool or this like race car driver that he was hoping. So he loses another trial, and then you would think like, all right, that's it. A lot of time went to being mad about this trial. I'm just going to let go and move on with my life. Well, then I guess he was still just furious. So he then wrote and self-published a book called Moron Drivers. So I think that story really shows how petty he could be if he perceived himself being defeated or losing something. He's like, I'm used to winning. I'm a good opera singer. I can climb Mount Everest. I got huge calves. I made a bunch of money in Asia. How could I lose anything? And another time where it shows kind of how petty and maybe just, I don't know. Well, he lived with a woman for a while, and then they broke up and went separate ways, but she was pregnant and had a kid pretty soon right after that. And so she, approached him and said, I think this is your kid. Can we work together? And he fought the paternity claim for 2 years in court, and then finally they did the test, and he was the father. And after 2 years of just a cutthroat legal battle, he accepted his daughter, which is kind of funny. I was thinking, like, after 2 years of cutthroat court, lawyers, money, it's like, I love you, my daughter. I guess he introduced his new daughter to his 4 other kids, and they said he called his new daughter every Sunday at 7 p.m. Wow. And so he's living in Arizona. He's living this it sounds like a pretty good life. He's dating all these women. He's a family guy, but he buys the mansion. I just really can't get over it. Why did he take over the horrific mortgage mansion from his business associate? I don't get it. But anyway, he's in a financial free fall. The big balloon payment of $2.3 million is coming up quick. And so Michael Marin comes up with a plan to auction off the house. And the plan, it actually sounds pretty good if you just hear it from him, which is he wants to auction off the place, which he wants to sell, I think, 176,000 $25 raffle tickets, and then the big raffle would be on July 4th. And someone, maybe you buy one or a couple tickets, maybe you buy a bunch, but someone then would win the big mansion with the movie theater in a raffle. And the way, according to Michael Marin, that it was set up was he would make back the money that he put into it, wouldn't make any more. He's like, I just want to make back what I put in, and then I want to walk away and move on. And he would also get rid of the house, which was ruining his life financially. And then third, what was the third reason? There was a third reason of why. I don't know. I forgot. But anyway, so it's just he's thinking, I can just get out from this horrible problem and it'll all be over. And like I said at the beginning, he decided, you know what? I got to sell all these raffle tickets. I am going to climb Mount Everest, do a bunch of TV interviews, say I'm selling this mansion for $25. It's going to work perfectly. Well, another thing that is pretty hard to find more information on than just the normal news stories that came out, but the authorities pretty late in the game, getting close to the day the auction was supposed to be, shut down the auction. The guy that investigated it later said that it wasn't quite as like, woo, charity, man, as maybe Michael Marin was selling at the beginning of the plan. And through that investigation, they said that they had taken out sort of a bogus second mortgage to maybe pump up the amount that the house is worth in order to, once the whole raffle goes down, the charity does get their $500,000. Michael Marin does get to walk away from the whole thing, but the difference is Michael Marin was also making $1 million that he hadn't said in the beginning, at least according to the guy that investigated the whole raffle mansion plan. And so the authorities shut it down. And as you can imagine, Michael Marin was furious. He took it very personally. He, like I talked about earlier, he took it as a defeat and didn't take it well. So now he thought, I'm getting out of it. I'm going to raffle it off. Woohoo. Now he has this mansion. There's no plan to get rid of it. It would take a while to sell it. The balloon payment is coming down. And so the auction was supposed to be on July 4th. On July 5th, the next day, a 911 call comes in, and the 911 person answers and goes, yeah, 911, what's your emergency? And it's Michael Marin, and he goes, yeah, my house is on fire. And she's going, okay, your house is on fire, can you get out? And he goes, yeah, I have one of those ladders. And she goes, where's the ladder? And he goes, something like, you know what, I'd rather deal with that than talk to you. Let me get the hell out of here. And the story is that as this big 10,000 square foot mansion with one of the worst mortgages I've ever seen, as this giant structure goes up in flame, the story is that dramatically and, according to Michael, epically, the window of the second floor opens. One of those fire rope ladders that everybody's supposed to have comes rolling out, and then dressed in full scuba gear with the mask, the goggles, and the tanks on his back, Michael Marin escapes the blaze by climbing down the rope ladder from the second floor wearing his scuba gear. And then there's like a infamous picture of his scuba gear laying on the floor or laying on the ground out in his yard. The structure burns, and he's taken to the hospital that night, where he does an interview from his hospital bed where he goes, and I remembered that I think I had a little more air in the scuba tank in my closet, and if I didn't have that scuba tank, if I didn't have that gear, and he leans his head back and goes, I don't think that we'd be talking. So he decided to do a interview from the hospital bed. We've talked about that a lot. I wouldn't, if you're planning on doing something that leads to a couple decades in prison, I wouldn't do a TV interview and let a camera film your face in HD. So he does this bizarre interview from the hospital bed where he's going, I wouldn't be here if not for my scuba equipment. Well, that hits the news, and I think that he thought people were going to go, oh my God, this man escaped. He's so brave. The scuba gear, it's so cool. But he kind of became a joke. Like, hey, that guy, Scuba Steve, that dramatically climbed down the ladder. And very quickly, arson investigators, this is again, I don't know how a guy supposedly as smart as Michael, who goes to Yale and does all this stuff around the world, I don't know why he would buy the mansion. And then again, I don't know why he would think that he could burn the house down and arson investigators wouldn't immediately figure it out. And that's what they did. They found 4 spots in the house where it's pretty much obvious someone started the fire. They found the accelerant, and then they found just boxes and boxes of phone books that were placed everywhere to get the fire to spread. And so he thought he was going to raffle off this nightmare property, be done, maybe make a little quick million on the side that no one needs to know about. Hey, we donated money to a charity, don't worry about it. And so he climbed Everest to promote it, and after all that, Michael Marin is charged with arson of an occupied structure, which you could go from 7 years to 21 years in prison. It takes a couple years. That was in 2009. It takes a couple years for everything to come together. And in the trial, he is found guilty. And this is the moment where you've probably seen before. It's been viewed probably 10 million times on YouTube. But in the moment where he Oh, at first he was arrested, brought into jail. He had to do 10 days in jail before he bonded out. That's when he wrote the script about, or the play about himself. And it's about a man who was wrongfully accused and is in jail. And it's obviously him. And the other inmates describe him as this extreme badass. And that's when he references the Heineken, the most interesting man in the world. But that play ends with him, his character, going on this monologue about how he's actually just deeply insecure and how he doesn't have any relationships. He doesn't get any love that's unconditional. So you get to see kind of the insecurities of one of those overachievers really come to life in his play. But he had to do 10 days and then he bonded out, and he was out that whole time leading to the trial, a couple years. And finally, trial's over. Like I said, they said there's a verdict back and you have been found guilty of arson of an occupied structure. And this is the clip that's gone. You see he's sitting there at the table where the defendant and his lawyers, and as the judge says guilty, you see him close his eyes and then he puts something in his mouth, and you see him just kind of sit there, and he takes a drink, and a few minutes later, he fishes out and starts convulsing and falls over, and they take him to the hospital, and he dies. And they found later that he had taken a cyanide pill. He had waited for, he was going to see if he was found guilty or not. As soon as they said guilty, he said, "Goodbye, cruel world," and took the cyanide, which he had bought the month before for $93 from some chemical place. He had also, I think, sent something to one of his sons. He had gotten his affairs in order. It said something like, if it goes bad in court, So what a story to leave. Yeah, I should have, I guess, just gone into bankruptcy or let the mansion go, or who knows. But whatever it was the worst plan ever to come down. I am the scuba escape man, the hero. And everyone's like, no, you're going to prison. And that's the story, people, of Michael Marin. I'm going to cut it off there. I hope you guys are having a good start to the week. I will see you soon. Love y'all. Why? Stiving why?